Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to analyze an article from the Hindu. This article, students, is based on the Agnipath scheme. So as we all are aware that the government of India has recently announced the Agnipath scheme, which is about recruitments into the Indian armed forces. Now, students, even though there is a section that is all praises for this particular scheme, however, a large section of people, particularly youth and several student organizations, have taken to streets to protest against the scheme, students. There are violent protests around the country wherein the trains and vehicles have been set to fire, property has been vandalized. These people demand that the government withdraw the scheme. Now, students, in this video, we are going to first analyze an article that featured in the Hindu, wherein the author takes the view that this scheme is nothing more than a cost-cutting measure. So the author takes a negative view. So we'll closely understand that why. Why has the author taken a negative view? Also, students, post that, we're going to look at this scheme very closely. We would understand its various pros and cons to get a better understanding of what this scheme is about. So let's get started. Now, students, the article is titled Playing with Fire on Agnipath. So now the author of this article, he takes the view that the Agnipath must be put on hold given the failure to push it as anything but a cost-cutting measure. So we are going to take up all the terms of the scheme a little later in the presentation, but very briefly, I'm sure you all are already aware that according to the scheme, as per the scheme, the total duration of services is going to be reduced to 4 years, right? So a large number of youth would be hired, they would be trained, duly trained, but the total duration of services would be reduced to 4 hours as opposed to the regular services earlier. The government would also, provide them with certain funds and would also help them, in getting jobs post their retirement. Now, students, in this article, the author says that by reducing the number of years of service to 4, right, the government is only doing this as a cost-cutting measure. It's only to cut cost, and there is no other strategic objective that the government can meet through this scheme. The article next says that all non-officer appointments to the 3 wings of the Indian Armed Forces would be through the scheme, would be through the Agnipath. And like it says, if you read the third point, it says that this scheme has turned out to be really divisive. On one hand, you have a section of people who are all praises for this scheme. On the other hand, you have another section of people who have termed this as just a cost-cutting measure, and they have expressed their reservation and shock over the scheme, and hence all these protests, right? So students, let's understand that what is the good about the scheme and what is the bad about the scheme. Now, it says that youth aspiring to join the forces are on the streets in protest in several states with modest education skills. They fear the new process stalls an accessible escape route from poverty, students. Now you have to understand this. Students, in India, we have a large number of people from the bottom of the pyramid, from the downtrodden section of the society, people from the poor background. They look at army, as an escape route from poverty. So they get hired in the ranks. In the ranks are the lowermost, the entry-level positions of the army, when people are, recruited as soldiers, not commissioned as officers, recruited as soldiers. So there are 2 entry points into the army. One is at the entry level, the lower level, wherein one gets hired as a soldier, and the other is at much higher level, wherein a person gets recruited by getting commissioned into the army as an officer. Now, this scheme is about the recruitments at the entry level, at the lower level, wherein youth is hired as soldiers. So now students, it says that this scheme has led to the frustration among youth because many of them see army as an escape route from poverty. We all know that army people, they're paid well, like not just army, all the armed forces, basically, they are paid well. They have, it is a pensionable job. They have several other facilities and amenities. Now, when the government says that we are going to reduce the, the duration of services to just 4 years, post that people would be retired and there would be no pension, right? And of course, the various other facilities and amenities that are attached to it. So obviously that has led to protest from the youth. As opposed to the existing 15 years plus service followed by lifelong pension, the new recruits or Agniveers will have a 4-year tenure, including 6 months of training. So basically 3.5 years of job, because out of 4 years, the first 6 months is going to be the training students. And it says that upon completion, they will be given an opportunity to apply for permanent cadre, and up to a fourth would be enrolled as regular cadre students. So out of the total people who would be recruited through this route, only 1/4 of them, just about 25% of them, maybe possibly the people with the best performance, would be allowed to continue in the services, right? Or would get an opportunity to apply for permanent cadre. The other would be retired. And this precisely is the reason for the protests. Now, students, let's look at the government side. What does the government say? What are the positives about the scheme that the government talks about, and what is government's rationale in bringing up this scheme? So the government says that the new scheme will help build a younger, fitter defense force with personnel more trainable in the changing technological environment. And it also says that it will also inculcate military discipline, ethos, and skilling as a value addition, improving the prospects for those who return to civil society. So basically here, there are two primary benefits that the government lists about the scheme. Number one, the government says that we would have a much younger forces in place. It is going to reduce the average age of the army, right, of the armed forces, basically, with a large number of young people being hired at the entry level, and lesser number of people with higher age being allowed to continue in the services. We would have a much younger and a fitter army, right? And given that they are young, they would be more trainable, right? And they would also take to or embrace or adapt well with the changing technological environment. Yes. And the other benefit that has been highlighted is that it would inculcate military discipline, ethos, and skilling among the young generation, among the youth students. So because a large number of people would be hired at the entry level, and they would be duly trained, right? And obviously, when you're trained in the forces, you naturally, pick up military discipline and ethos and skilling. And post-retirement, right? Once you exit the forces, the youth would turn to other jobs. Obviously, they would take up other jobs, and hence the country would have this, like a disciplined brigade of people, skilled brigade of people with military ethos available to work in various sectors. So that's the second benefit. Now, students, look at what the author says. The author says that to start with, there will be no permanent recruitment in the armed forces for the next 4 years. So next 4 years, there's going to be absolutely no permanent recruitment, right? Now, critics who include many fellow travelers of the ruling BJP have raised concerns such as potential damage to operational preparedness given the crisis on the borders, with personnel hired for the short term, trained in a rush, and lacking the camaraderie that professional forces possess, students. So basically, now let's understand that what are the critics saying? So that according to the critics, if you're not hiring people for the next 4 years, permanent recruitment is not happening for the next 4 years, and you hire people post that on a short-term basis, right? It would damage our operational preparedness. In the event of the war, India would not be duly prepared to face the aggression right? We wouldn't be prepared for the war, students. It is going to damage our operational preparedness, right? And if the people hired, if they would be trained in a rush, they would lack the camaraderie that professional forces possess, students. Basically, they're saying that because it is so short in tenure, people wouldn't get time to really intermingle with each other, get to know each other better. So that camaraderie, that sense of unity that is required, that cannot be set in such a short period of time. If a soldier's job is now turned into a contractual employment, it might not motivate aspirants who hope for job security, pension, and honor, students, right? So according to the author, people look to armed forces, look to services, because it gives an opportunity to them to demonstrate their patriotism. For them, it is a matter of honor. It is a matter of patriotism. It is a matter of job security, and that's an added benefit, right? That they also look at forces, as a source of secure income, right? And the fact that it is pensionable, that is an added benefit. So these students, because of these, incentives not available to them, if you turn the forces into contractual employment, it would leave the youth demotivated, students. Next, students, it says that the argument that defense should not be treated as an employment guarantee scheme is rhetorically impressive. But the fact is that from the manufacturing of the arms to the employment of soldiers, the sector plays a critical role in the economy, right? So the author says, look, this whole rhetoric of, like this army cannot be treated as an employment guarantee, right? You cannot look to army as a mere source of income and a job that gives you a secured life, right? This looks impressive. However, students, the fact that from manufacturing of the arms to the employment of soldiers, this sector plays a very critical role. So the author says, look, the sector plays a very critical role. And you cannot take any step, you cannot bring in any scheme that leaves the aspirants demotivated, right? Because this sector is so critical, it's so crucial. For a country like India, where unemployment remains a major policy challenge, the concerns cannot be dismissed easily. And the government cannot just, ignore or overlook or just dismiss the concerns. The government will have to take cognizance of them and will have to address the concerns, right? It could be in the form of withdrawing the scheme, or it could be in the form of, changing some terms and conditions of the scheme such that it becomes acceptable to the aspirants. The government also faces the very credible charge that this is nothing more than a cost-cutting plan. So like I said, that it is being termed as merely a cost-cutting plan, that it does not meet any other objective other than plain cost-cutting. Considering all this, the center must put the plan on hold and revisit it in consultation with the political parties and a wider range of experts. So basically, it says that the government needs to get into a consultative mode. It needs to consult the other political parties which represent other factions, and they need to, discuss with a range of experts to see that what could be done now, given the massive protest against the scheme. Now, students, let's look at the precise terms of the scheme. So what is the Agnipat scheme? It allows patriotic and motivated youth to serve in the armed forces for a period of 4 years. So number one, 4 years, students, keep it in mind. And the youth joining the army would be called Agniveers, and they would be recruited for a short duration of 4 years. Now, under this new scheme, students, around 45,000 to 50,000 soldiers will be recruited annually, and most will leave the services in just 4 years. However, after 4 years, only 25% of the batch will be recruited back into the respective services for a period of 15 years. So that means a minority of 25% people, like I said, probably on the basis of performance and fitness, will be allowed to continue in the regular services. So they would be recruited back into their respective services for a period of 15 years. So after 4 years, they would get another 15 years, which again is not like a full-fledged employment. So what is the eligibility criteria? It is only for personnel below officer rank. So like I said, this is about recruitment at the entry level position, at the lowest level positions in the army, that is at the rank of soldier, right? And it is not for people who would be joining the forces as commissioned officers. Aspirants between the ages of 17.5 years and 23 years will be eligible to apply, students. So this is the age limit that people between 17.5 years and 23 years can apply through this route. Now, students, what are the objectives? So it aims at providing an opportunity to the patriotic and motivated youth with the Josh and Jasba to join the armed forces, right? So students, because there is no like a formal mechanism for entry, like a formal exam in the form of an aptitude test. So it just gives an opportunity to everyone, regardless of their IQ. They give them the opportunity to join the forces, right? People with the Josh and the Jasba, right? Who couldn't have otherwise cleared the exam. So they get a chance for the direct entry into the forces only on the basis of their passion to join the army. It is expected to bring down the average age profile of the Indian Armed Forces by about 4 to 5 years, students. So when you hire more people at the entry level, the younger crop, it is going to drastically reduce the average age of the army. The scheme envisions that the average age in the forces is 32 years today, which will go down to 26 in the 6 to 7 year, students, when this scheme takes effect. If this scheme is implemented, it would reduce the average age from the current 32 years to 26 in the next 6 to 7 years, right? Now, if you look at the compensation, students, please look at this graphic. So it tells you about the pay and benefits. So in-hand salary is going to be 70%, and the rest, 30%, would be contributed to a fund, basically, to a corpus, to a fund known as Seva Nidhi. The total of this fund, wherein the government is going to make its contribution also, the total of this fund is going to be made available or would be provided to the people, to the Agniveers, when they exit the army after 4 years, right? So it says that the basic pay is going to be in the first year 30,000, second year 33,000, third year 36,500, and fourth year 40,000. So first year students like 21,000 and 9,000 would go into the corpus. 23,000 in hand, 9,900 would go into the funds, like, right? And after 4 years, when they exit the army, they would, the Seva Nidhi package, the Seva Nidhi fund would have a total amount of 11.71 lakh. This would include, if you look on the right-hand side, the 5.02 lakh contribution of the soldiers themselves, and 5.02 lakh by the government. An equal amount would be contributed by the government. Where is this 5.02 lakh contribution of the students coming from? The monthly deduction that's going to be made from their salary, right? So a total of 11.71 lakh is going to be accumulated, and including the interest would be made available to the Agniveers. Now, students, let's look at the benefits. So it says that upon the completion of the 4 years of services, a one-time Seva Nidhi package of rupees 11.71 lakh will be paid. They will also get a rupees 48 lakh life insurance cover for 4 years, students, right? So not just 11.71 lakh lump sum amount, but also rupees 48 lakh life insurance. And in case of death, the payout will be over rupees 1 crore, including pay for the unserved tenure students, right? So say if somebody is going to, somebody, God forbid, loses his life, during the course of those 4 years, the family is going to get a payout of over rupees 1 crore, right? And also the salary for the unserved duration, right? And the government will help rehabilitate soldiers who leave the services after 4 years. They will be provided with skill certificates and bridge courses. So to help them find employment post their retirement. The government is going to provide them with skill certificates and bridge courses, right? And also assist them in rehabilitating in the civil life students. So basically helping in finding alternate employment. Now the concerned students, as I have already spoken about it, the concerns, employment post-retirement from army, right? So according to many people, it is not easy to find employment in spite of having served in the army. And particularly with the rising rate of unemployment within the country and the limited job opportunities available. So people have this concern that finding employment post-retirement would be a challenge, a major challenge, right? Secondly, no pension benefit. According to the scheme, there is no pension benefit. There's only a lump sum amount that would be given to them of 11.71 lakh. There is no regular pension available to them. So there is no such provision. So that is in fact a major concern. And training may remain unutilized. So that is another concern that, okay, the government might train them, but when they are not able to, sort of make use of that training for long, of what use is that training, right? So that would go unutilized because they would be particularly trained in the, skills that befit a soldier, basically. So they might be irrelevant for the civil life and they would hence remain unutilized. Now, what is the significance of such step for the country? So how would the country benefit from this scheme? Number one, you would have future ready soldiers, right? So you would have this young crop of soldiers that would obviously, when you are young, you are much fitter and you have greater passion and patriotism within you for the country. So that is one advantage, students. Secondly, that's going to reduce the, the average age of the forces from the current 32 to 26 years in the next 6 to 7 years. When they say future ready soldiers, it means that in case of, any untoward event, right? Any unfortunate event, for example, a civil war or a sudden external aggression, you would have a crop of future ready soldiers, right? And you would also have future ready soldiers in the sense that you would have this young crop of people who are well trained and well adapted to the current demands of the army. And more employment opportunities, students, right? These people, once they are trained by the Indian Army, right? Once they are, they've been certified by the Indian Army, they would also be, assisted by the Indian Army to find employment post-retirement. So that is going to provide them with better employment opportunities. And also we would have people with higher skills available. So the workforce, all that brigade that's going to retire every year after 4 years, students, they would be available for employment by the corporate, in the other public sector organization. And since these people would be inculcated and instilled with the discipline and military ethos, right? They obviously would be more employable than others. So they would have better skills. It aims at providing an opportunity to the patriotic and motivated youth with the Josh and Jaspa students. Like I said, that because there is no formal examination, aptitude exam for entry into this. So it just, and we can also say that probably the entry would be much easier also than before, right? So it would provide an opportunity to all those people who would have otherwise probably not have been, they wouldn't have been able to sort of get recruited on their own merit, right? And hence miss the opportunity to work in the army. They would get an opportunity to serve the Indian Army. So people with Josh, with Jaspa, with patriotism, with the passion to join the Indian Army, they would get a good opportunity. And of course, it would bring down the average age profile from the current 32 to 26. So these were the students, both pros or the positives of the scheme, as well as the downsides, the cons of the scheme. Now it is for the government, to duly deliberate upon this within the parliament and beyond, with experts, with other political parties, to finally, before the final decision taken by them, before they finally choose to, you know, roll out the scheme. So that's all for this video, students. I would see you very soon with another video. Thank you so much.